Good evening, and welcome to Sports101, the show that discusses sport beyond the X's and O's. We expand our conversation to include the history in the past, the present, as well as in the making, and we also look at the game from a people, places, and cultural perspective. I'm your host, Jamar Harp. Be sure to follow me on social media at Coach_Hart412 and Facebook under Jamar Harp. Please get social with Sports101 and a litany of other shows on SportsZone Chicago by following SportsZone Chicago on social media. SportsZone Chicago can be found on Twitter at SportsZone CHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Remember, SportsZone Chicago is the world's only Black-owned sports talk app. You can watch and listen to my show, our flagship show, Sean and Mai in the morning, any new breaking shows, and our much-anticipated Sports Zone Chicago at night. Keep up with breaking news of your favorite team. If you miss anything, don't worry about it. Just go to YouTube and search Sports Zone Chicago. Subscribe to the channel. After you do that, it's imperative that everyone download the Sports Zone Chicago app. The Sports Zone Chicago app you find in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. Now I'd like to talk about this week's episode, which is the United States Football League. The USFL hasn't played a game since the league folded in 1985. However, in 2022, the Spring League is returning, or at least a version of it is. The new USFL is unrelated to the USFL of old, but its goal was still largely the same. The league wants to capitalize on the void during the NFL offseason when minimal action is taking place by playing live football games. The major difference between the new league and the old one is that the new one knows it cannot survive challenging the NFL. Well, later on in the old USFL, they wanted to challenge the NFL. The USFL is the latest spring startup league that will play its first season in 2022. The league features 8 teams that will play in 2 conferences and play a 10-week regular season and a 2-week postseason to determine the 2022 champion. The new USFL is of no relation to the original USFL, which played originally from 1983 to 1985. However, it does own the trademarks that belong to the old league. That's why the 8 teams are named the original USFL teams and contain similar and in some cases identical branding to the original versions. Fox Sports owns a minority stake in the new USFL and will broadcast all the league games along with NBC's family of networks, which is NBC, USA, and Peacock. Brian Woods right here, the founder of another spring startup league, the Spring League, will be the new president of the United States Football League. Next, we have former Dallas Cowboy Daryl Moose Johnson, who will be the executive vice president of football operations, with Mike Pereira serving as the head of officiating. Now let's talk about the original USFL. The original United States Football League was an American Football League that played for 3 seasons starting in 1983, culminating in 1985. The league played a spring-summer schedule in each of its active seasons. The 1986 season was scheduled to be played in the autumn-winter, directly competing against the long-established National Football League. However, that season did not come to fruition. However, the United States Football League ceased operations before the season was scheduled to begin. The origins behind the United States Football League were conceived in 1965 by a New Orleans businessman named David Dixon. Mr. Dixon saw a market for a professional football league that would play in the summer when the NFL was off and college football was in the off season. And again, being in the deep South and other pockets of this country, I think this is a college football country. So everyone, wants college football in the off season. Mr. Dixon had been a key player in the construction of the Superdome in New Orleans, as well as the expansion of the NFL with the Saints in 1967. To do this, he developed his quote-unquote Dixon plan, and that was a blueprint for the USFL based upon securing NFL-caliber stadiums and top television markets. The next thing you had to do in the Dixon plan was get a national broadcast contract and control spending, meaning you wouldn't blow the bank on players because you wanted to have a competitive league and get more people in, and not having such a large dichotomy, having two teams with all the best players and everybody else is fodder. And then the last part of the Dixon plan was to get investors to buy in. The original franchise owners and founders of the United States Football League had originally promised to abide by these general guidelines set out by Mr. Dixon. However, problems arose before they even took the field, as some of the franchises facing financial problems faced instability from the beginning. Other franchises owners just went and bought players with their own money. So due to pressure from the NFL, some franchises had difficulty securing leases in stadiums that were also used by NFL teams, which forced them to scramble and find alternative venues in the chosen city that the USFL had decided to start this inaugural season. Another difference between the USFL and the NFL is that the USFL had no hard salary cap. And because of this, some teams quickly escalated player payrolls to unsustainable levels despite pledges to the owners, again, to keep the costs down to have a competitive league. Now, there was a handful of USFL franchises that abided by the Dixon plan and were relatively stable. However, others suffered repeated financial crises, and many franchises had to relocate. They merged with other teams. There was ownership changes just during this short 3 years. However, none of his teams folded during any given season, so they always found a way to make it right and get someone else to buy the team, change locations, etc. These problems worsened as some owners, again, started engaging in bidding wars for star players against the NFL due to their deep pockets. One of the owners, most notably, was Donald Trump, who owned the New Jersey team, and that forced other owners to do the same thing or face a disadvantage. So 3 consecutive Heisman Trophy winners signed with the United States Football League directly out of college. The reason this is at that time, college football wanted you to play 4 years before you went to the NFL, and these Heisman Trophy winners left after 3 years, and they weren't eligible to go to the NFL, so they took, millions to go to the upstart United States Football League. These players include Georgia running back Herschel Walker, Boston College quarterback Doug Flutie, who both signed with the New Jersey Generals. You see Doug Flutie right there with Mr. Tagliabue and Donald Trump. And then the Nebraska running back Mike Rozier, signed with the Pittsburgh Maulers. Now, we brought a slight reference in talking about the salaries and what they had to do to compete against the NFL for these top players. So let's take Herschel Walker, for example. Herschel Walker had a $5 million 3-year contract with the New Jersey Generals, which was very uncomplicated. It was as seamless as running inside zone. Again, this was to get him to sign with them versus going to the NFL so they can star marquee players to attract television viewership. According to sources in Georgia and in the United States Football League, the 20-year-old running back had already collected $2 million. He had a $1 million signing bonus and a $1 million salary bonus for the Generals' 18-game season that was supposed to open that Sunday in Los Angeles. His salary for the 1984 season was also going to be $1 million. And remember, this is the 1980s. This is before free agency. So these NFL contracts aren't the contracts of the day. The USFL was offering bigger contracts than the National Football League. In 1985, his salary was going to go to $1.2 million and be subject to options on the New Jersey Generals. In addition, the Generals will lend him $750,000 for his investment portfolio to invest in whatever he deemed fit. And despite this $5 million job and the NFL computer, he is now, they just looked at him as a college dropout who was ineligible for the April 26th draft, again, because the NFL did not take underclassmen at that time. Donald Trump and the New Jersey Generals also signed Doug Flutie, to a contract worth at least $7 million over 5 years, again with the New Jersey Generals of the United States Football League. He was a third straight Heisman Trophy winner to sign with the USFL, following Herschel Walker of Georgia, who played for the Generals, and Nebraska's Mike Rozier, who recently he had bought out his contract with the defunct Pittsburgh Maulers to move to the National Football League. It was believed the deal would make Flutie the highest paid pro football player and the highest paid rookie in any sport ever. So let's take a quick look at this video right here, and we'll see some origins of the United States Football League. I'm Jamar Harp, and this is Sports 101.
As the football season winds down, it's the perfect time to go to a game. SeatGeek takes tickets from all across the web and puts them into one area, making buying simple. They put these on a 1 to 100 scale, so you know you're getting a good deal. Plus, if you haven't done it yet, use my promo code KTO on your first purchase. That's good for $20 off. Big shout out to SeatGeek for the sponsor. Now, let's get into this video. In America, the NFL is so popular, no other professional football league in the country even comes close. Over the course of the last 50 years, there has been multiple leagues that have attempted to compete with the NFL. The WFL in the 70s was a total disaster, and the XFL in the early 2000s only lasted one season before completely falling apart. But in the mid-80s, there was a point when it seemed like the NFL could be taken over by the United States Football League. In 1965, New Orleans businessman David Dixon saw a potential opportunity, a professional football league that plays when the NFL and college football were in their offseason. He called it the Dixon Plan, the blueprint for the USFL. And over the course of the next 15 years, he worked on securing NFL caliber stadiums, securing national TV contracts. Teams planned for large year-one preseason promotional budgets to introduce teams to the local market. A tight salary cap of $1.8 million per team. The NFL didn't introduce a salary cap until 1994 and found investors who were willing to buy in. And a territorial draft to better stock teams with familiar college talent. 3 months prior to the 1983 NFL draft, the USFL's inaugural draft took place. If the USFL was going to work, it was going to need notable players. But with two leagues trying to draft from the same pool of players, this created obvious problems. Drafting a certain player didn't mean that they were going to take your offer, but franchises in the USFL tried anyway. Dan Marino, John Elway, and Eric Dickerson, just to name a few, were all drafted by teams in the USFL. None of these three would ever play in this league. In fact, only about 30% of the 600 total players selected would sign with the USFL. But all this league needed was a few faces to push it forward.
Walker's still going. He's out of bounds. An incredible burst of speed and strength by Herschel Walker.
Probably the most notable player signed in the USFL was reigning Heisman Trophy winner Herschel Walker. Walker had just finished his junior season at Georgia. He wasn't eligible to be drafted into the NFL, but the USFL, on the other hand, was allowing athletes to turn professional after their junior season, unlike the NFL at the time. For the USFL, this was huge. The league was set to kick off spring football.
Inside the 3. Kent Hall ready to snap the ball to Scott. Tight end in motion. Herschel Walker straight ahead into the end zone. Touchdown. Scott back to throw. Scott dumps it out to Herschel Walker. Look at that. Walker's got the first down, still on his feet. Nobody can catch him there. He's got the speed. Nobody will. 65 yards.
The ball. He does most of this on his own. You'll see Corker coming into the picture. Gets bumped off. Herschel runs through 2 tackles. And once Clarence Chapman, number 22, the only man that really has a shot at him, and there's no way to catch him.
He's got the angle on him, and it made no difference.
With the original idea behind this league, teams were not supposed to turn a profit in year one, but one did. The Denver Gold, who had a losing record, but it just goes to show that the fans were out there. In fact, average attendance as a whole was around 25,000 fans per game, and TV ratings had exceeded expectations, and all of this was topped off with a wild championship game.
They can physically at this point to try and stop Michigan. Michigan, of course, wanting to pick up another first down.
Second down and 10 from the 48 of Philadelphia. Lush comes up,
Shows blitz, and he's coming. Beats on. Mayberry gets it away. Carter's there. First down. He's loose. He's got some help. He's going for the corner. Touchdown. Whoa!
One thing was for sure, the USFL's brand of football was exciting and fans were buying in. In 1984, the New Jersey Generals were sold to Donald Trump. Trump, along with a few other owners, really pursued players in the NFL, and they brought in some serious talent. Trump signed Brian Sipe from the Cleveland Browns, who had just won NFL MVP 3 seasons prior. The Gamblers, the Gunslingers, the Showboats, the Outlaws. Trump, 3 straight Heisman Trophy winners drafted and played in the USFL.
You may have noticed how the USFL has attracted top quality players, like Heisman Trophy winners Doug Flutie and Herschel Walker. Boy, can they play, but they can do more than play in the USFL. Like we can do this and this. Check us out, the USFL, where football is still a game.
The theme of this league was clear. It was aggressive, thrilling, and most of all, entertaining. This aggressive mindset made the football exciting, but it ultimately backfired. First off, the Dixon plan had originally called for a $1.8 million salary cap for each team, but several teams far exceeded this amount in pursuit of players. This was done through the owners directly paying the players themselves. Due to trying to be competitive, this helped give the league some credibility, but teams were losing a lot more money. This caused many teams to eventually merge with one another or just completely fold altogether. Plus, there was some shady deals going on between owners.
What is your favorite story from the book, if you could choose one of the many?
I mean, the Chicago Blitz and the Arizona Wranglers were traded for each other after the first season. So the Blitz were George Allen's team, and they had they had like Tim Spencer and Greg Landry and Tim Reitman. They had good players. And the Wranglers were this crappy team in Arizona that I think they finished 4-14. It was an 18-game season. But the owner of the Chicago Blitz was a guy named Ted Dietrich who lived in Arizona. And he got tired of making 9 3-hour flights via charter jet to Chicago. So he had the teams traded for each other. So all the players in Chicago were traded for all the players in Arizona. And the Blitz became the Wranglers, and the Wranglers became the Blitz. As players said to me, like, my kids had to drop out of school and move to Arizona. My wife had to quit her job because this guy didn't want to fly 3 hours. So it's the best solution ever. But wait,
yeah.
The new owner of the Chicago Blitz is a guy named James Hoffman. 2 games into the season, he's walking off the field. The new Blitz are terrible. Their coach is Marv Levy. Marv Levy thought he was getting the good team until he showed up. Nobody told him the teams were traded for each other.
Oh, my God, come on.
I swear to God. The owner, it's 2 games in. The owner's walking off the field with this guy, a former Bear named Dan Jiggets.
Oh, he does sports talk radio for years in Chicago.
So Dan Jiggets played for the Blitz.
Sure.
Dan Jiggets and the owner of the Blitz are walking off the field. And Hoffman, the owner, says, I'm out of here. And Jiggets is like, oh, where are you going? He's like, no. I'm out of here. I'm done with this. I don't want to do this anymore. And Jiggets is like, what? He's like, yeah, I'm done. I don't want to own this team anymore. He literally dumped the team on the side of the road and the USFL had to take over. Like he just decided one day, I don't really want to own a USFL team anymore. I think I'm done.
Along with teams going bankrupt, in 1984, some of the owners began the discussion of moving the league to the fall to directly compete with the NFL. This idea was mostly pushed by owners Eddie Einhorn and Donald Trump. They thought that this move would eventually force a merger between them and the NFL. The hope was that a handful of the teams and their owners who made it into the league would double their original investment. After the USFL's second season, the owners voted to move the league to the fall. This was an extremely aggressive attempt to help out a handful of owners, while the rest of the league would just dissolve.
Dissolve? What's dissolve? Is that even a word?
Yes, it is a word. And financially, it means you'll cease to exist. Let's don't get emotional about it.
No!
All right, you're being, well, Jackie, don't bite yourself. Come on.
No!
ABC had offered the USFL a 4-year, $175 million TV deal to play in the spring of '86, but there just wasn't enough advocates left for the contract. With the league falling apart by the end of 1985, it was time for a desperate move. The USFL attempted to sue the NFL. claiming that they bullied major networks into not televising USFL games, and claiming that the NFL had a specific plan to eliminate the USFL. They sought $567 million in damages, which could have been tripled to $1.7 billion under antitrust laws. The USFL won, technically. You will not believe how much they got. They received a check in 1990 for $3.76. Yeah.
Trump had an, overvalued sort of presence. He convinced the other owners to move to fall. They famously sued the NFL. He guaranteed the other owners they would win the lawsuit. He guaranteed they would win.
And they did.
They won $1.
Times 3. They could have won
$1.3 billion. They won $3.
To this day, they have still never cashed that check. If you want to know more about the USFL, Jeff Pearlman wrote an entire book on the former league that came out this year. In the end, the USFL had a major impact on professional football in the 80s. The league had multiple...
All right, thank you much for tuning into that video. As you can see, in one of the world's biggest sports what-ifs, if Donald Trump had not convinced those owners to go to the fall with that ABC $175 million deal in their style of open play. Remember, this is still the 1980s when the NFL was down, kick out. The big linebackers are like defensive linemen. The the United States Football League played a more wide open scheme, similar to the AFL or historically black college football. So there was a difference in the leagues. You also missed out on an opportunity where players could have played in both. It could have been a good opportunity for teams to watch someone during the NFL year and see who they can poach on the different leagues. Nowadays, with today's media coverage, I know that would have been great. Now, besides that, the USFL did have a lot of success during this 3-year run. As we already talked about, stars like Herschel Walker, but there's some other people that played in the USFL you may not know of, or may know of, but did not know played in the UFLs. First will be Jim Kelly. This is right here. Jim Kelly played for the Gamblers. Then you have Steve Young. Steve Young played out in L.A. Reggie White. He played. Sam Mills also played a while in the league. And some other stars. Now, we talked about the success they were having. However, with issues with profitability, inconsistent membership, and again, Donald Trump's decision to get the owners to want to compete against the NFL in the fall led to the demise of the league. 18 different teams played in the USFL, and several of them played in multiple locations during the league's 3-year history, including the story we just heard about right there with Phoenix and Chicago. The Michigan Panthers won the first USFL championship game, while the Philadelphia Stars won the next two, the latter of which came after they moved to Baltimore in 1985. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back with the 2-year episode of Sports 101, I'm Jamar Harp, and we'll see you soon.
Stop and listen, because this important message may directly apply to you or someone dear to you. Several thousand African American former full-time CPS teachers were unfairly terminated starting in the mid-90s and continuing to the 2000s. If you are one of those many former CPS teachers who was unjustly terminated, or if you are the immediate relative of a now deceased unjustly terminated former CPS teacher, you may qualify to participate in a lawsuit at no upfront cost to you. Please call 773-580-7183 immediately for more information. That's 773-580-7183. Do not delay. Act today, because time is of the essence. That's 773-580-7183. 773-580-7183.
See me. See me.
See me. See my dark skin and my kinky hair.
See me. Don't see past me.
Don't see through me.
See me.
See my tan skin and my curly hair.
See me.
Don't see past me.
Don't see through me.
See me.
See my face, wet with tears from years of oppression.
See my hands, weathered and worn from decades of pulling myself up through your society.
See my feet, split from centuries of walking your delicate line.
See me.
See me.
See me.
I'm tired.
I'm tired.
I'm tired.
Welcome back. I'm Jamar Harp, and this is Sports 101, the show that discusses sport beyond the X's and O's. Again, we talk about the game from a people, places, and cultural perspective through the lens of history in the past, present, as well as in the making. Please make sure you get social with Sports 101 and a litany of other shows on SportsZone Chicago by following SportsZone Chicago on social media. SportsZone Chicago will be found on Twitter at SportsZone CHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, search SportsZone Chicago, but more importantly, download the SportsZone Chicago app. The SportsZone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. Now, before the break, we talked about the new USFL and its inception back in the early 80s, its demise due to Donald Trump and some greedy owners. Now we want to go into the newer version and talk about the current teams of the 2022 USFL. So if you look at this picture right here, you'll see all 8 teams. You have the Birmingham Stallions, the Houston Gamblers, the Michigan Panthers, the New Jersey Generals, and the New Orleans Breakers. That is one conference. And then you have the Philadelphia Stars, the Pittsburgh Maulers, and the Tampa Bay Bandits. So those are the teams that will make up the 2022 United States Football League that starts this Saturday. The USFL's inaugural draft was completed in February, as each of the 8 franchises selected 35 players for their rosters, and Sporting News tracked the results of that draft. The league also had a supplemental draft in March, during which 8 teams selected 10 more players, each to fill out the back end of their rosters and practice squads. In total, there will be 360 players on USFL rosters to begin the 2022 season. With the first pick of the 2022 USFL draft, the Michigan Panthers selected quarterback Shea Patterson from Ole Miss and the University of Michigan. Shea Patterson was an undrafted free agent in the 2020 NFL draft, and Patterson had a brief stint with the Kansas City Chiefs, in addition to the BC Lions, the Montreal Alouettes, and the Canadian Football League. He last left the Alouettes this past season. In 36 games at Ole Miss and the University of Michigan, Shea Patterson completed 60% of his passes while throwing for 8,800 yards and 68 touchdowns. Now I would like to show you a video of some of the top players that will be featured in the USFL this coming season.
Move the chains.
On YouTube, let's move the chains and discuss the United States Football League. But before we get into that real quick, comment any types of videos that you would like to see down below. Also, you can go to my community tab and you can actually ask me questions personally there. And for Friday, tomorrow, we are doing the mailbag show. Going to continue that series to answer any quick questions. But if any questions are a little bit bigger and need their own videos, we're definitely going to be able to do that. With that being said, these are the top 10 players I most really just think are going to have the biggest impact on the field immediately in the United States Football League. Guys who I think are game changers. Now, with that being said, I've definitely missed out on a lot of names. So I'd love to know some names maybe before you watch this that you think are going to make huge impacts in the USFL. This is really based on what I've seen from these players in college, the AAF, the XFL, maybe some fan-controlled football here and there, or the National Football League. So with that being said, let's get right into it. At number 10, I have Kyle Sloter. Football is supposed to be fun, and when you watch Kyle Sloter, or Sluter, I've seen different pronunciations, you get the sense that this guy plays for the love of the game, and when he's out there, he's just having fun. I encourage you to go watch his preseason highlights with the Vikings, where he sort of became an NFL meme. I remember watching him live when it was actually happening, and everybody in the league, it seemed like, was rooting for him. He was just so easy to root for because he is that dynamic playmaker that people just love to watch. He's a flat-out gamer. There's no other way to say it. I cannot wait to see how this works out with the Breakers in the USFL. It's going to be so much fun to watch him play. At number 9, Eli Rogers. This name should be pretty familiar for XFL fans. Every good quarterback needs a sure-handed wide receiver, and Jordan Teamu has that with the Bandits. And Eli Rogers, this is a guy who has been a significant player, and he's seen time in the National Football League on active rosters, actually playing, actually scoring in the real season with the Pittsburgh Steelers, receiving passes from Big Ben. He was also very fun to watch in the XFL, but maybe didn't have the best numbers when compared to some other guys because of mostly shaky quarterbacks with the DC Defenders. And that's not something that you can blame him for. He should be one of the top wideouts in the league, especially with a guy like Jordan Teamu delivering the football to him. At number 8, moving over to the defensive side of the football, here we have Jamar Summers, and we have a repeat Spring League star in Jamar Summers. He spent time in the Alliance of American Football with the Birmingham Iron and in the XFL with the New York Guardians. In both leagues, he was a great player, and I don't see why he wouldn't be in the same position for the Gamblers here. In a draft where we've seen a lot of talent at the wideout position, I think a great cornerback should be valued at a high level. At number 7, Kevontae Turpin. With Kevontae Turpin, the Generals may have found one of the most explosive players in the whole entire league. Not only can he play the receiver position, can you get him the ball in the open, in the flats, throw him some screens because of that game-breaking speed, but he's also a game breaker in the punting and the kick returns. So this is a guy who was unstoppable in college at TCU. He spent some time in Europe, the fan-controlled football league, as well as the spring league. I cannot wait to see what Kevontae can do in the USFL with the Gamblers. Number 6, Chris Orr. At linebacker, Chris Orr is a name that stands out as a potential star for the Generals defense. He played college ball for Wisconsin, showing flashes up until his final season where he cemented himself. He had 78 tackles, 14 tackles for loss, and 11.5 sacks. He spent time with the Panthers and for a brief time was on that active roster last year. If New Jersey found a borderline active roster player for their roster, then he has potential to be a breakout defensive player for New Jersey. At number 5, Mike Weber. Weber is a name that came out of nowhere, but I was super excited to see. People call him the mini version of Ezekiel Elliott, and he's got incredible bursts of speed and power that I think could translate well to make him possibly the top back in the league, or at least one of them in that conversation. I remember when it looked like Weber would break out and be the guy for Ohio State, but things just didn't fall his way. I cannot wait to see him in a General's uniform. Number 4, along the defense, Kayvon Walker. When you talk about a force along the defensive line, Kayvon Walker is a name that sticks out from the USFL draft. What he was able to do in the XFL in a short time period, leading the league with 4.5 sacks, was honestly incredible. He was able to not only contain the quarterbacks, but especially when they were scrambling out, he would take them down, and I think that he's going to be a key part in the defense for the Panthers, containing the quarterbacks in a league where we see a couple of mobile guys, so he's going to be a big player for Michigan. Number 3, Davion Smith, the former Michigan running back, was a force in the USFL, or in the XFL, with the Tampa Bay Vipers. He was a literal bowling ball for his team in the XFL and was one of the most exciting backs in the XFL. And I can't wait to watch him play, breaking tackles, kind of looking like a mini Derrick Henry out there. But one of the special things that he can do is catch the football out. And he had some incredible catches with the Vipers. It's going to be exciting to see what the XFL's top rusher can do with the Maulers. Number 2, at quarterback, Jordan Ta'amu. When we heard rumors that one of the XFL's biggest stars was coming to Birmingham for the new USFL, everybody got excited because we knew what was coming. Jordan Ta'amu answers one of the most important questions when looking at potential spring football players. What have you done for me lately? Well, Ta'amu is in game shape, and he led one of the hottest teams in the league with arguably the best talent. When compared to other spring football leagues, I mean, the XFL had really good players, and I would go out on a limb saying that the XFL had the highest quality football we had seen up to date from spring football leagues, and it's safe to say that the Bandits have a star at the quarterback position. And at number 1, my favorite player who I'm looking forward to seeing the most is Davin Bellamy, the dominant defensive end from Georgia, who was a key part in their success when they made the college football playoffs. I remember he was one of the most impactful defensive ends and players really in college football at the time, but he went undrafted and has moved from practice squad to practice squad. He was the number 1 defensive end taken in the USFL draft. Not really surprising when you compare it to all the other talents there. Not anything wrong about the other guys at defensive end, but he was a force. And we've heard many times in football, rushing the passer is one of the most important aspects of the game. The Breakers could have a breaker literally on the defensive line, and they could have the upper hand in the competition when rushing the passer. So I'd love to know your opinions down below on what you think about these players. What players did I miss on? Because I'm sure I did. It's very hard to make a top 10 list. I'd love to know your opinions down below. Thanks for watching The End Zone. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment so we can move the chains.
Going to be Hall of Famer.
You just saw a projected top 10 of the United States Football League players. Again, that league starts this fall. Now let's take a look at some of their head coaches. The first head coach we like to look at would be Skip Holtz. He's the head coach and GM of the Birmingham Stallions. He's a longtime college coach, and he'll be leading again the Birmingham team this starting this Saturday. Coach Holtz began his coaching career as a graduate assistant under the legendary Bobby Bowden at Florida State in 1988. He also worked under his father, Lou Holtz, while he was the head coach at Notre Dame. Next, we have the Houston Gamblers head coach, Kevin Sumlin. Sumlin is best known for a successful 6-year stint as a head coach of Texas A&M. There, he helped turn around the Aggies into a perennial SEC contender and led them to an 11-2 record and a Cotton Bowl win in his first season, and during which Johnny Manziel and Mike Evans were two of the biggest college football stars, and everyone remembers that epic game against Alabama. Next, we have Michigan Panthers head coach and general manager Jeff Fisher. Fisher, 64, is the most recognizable name amongst the United States Football League coaches. He spent 35 years in the NFL as both a player and a coach. He was a 7th-round pick by the Bears in 1981, but transitioned into coaching in 1985 while on injured reserve for the Super Bowl winning Chicago Bears. From there, Fisher will hold several notable assistant positions under legendary coaches such as Buddy Ryan, George Seifert, and Jack Pardee, who coached the Gamblers in the original United States Football League. Fisher was the youngest defensive coordinator in NFL in 1988 at the age of 30 years old, and eventually became the head coach of the Houston Oilers, and became the Tennessee Titans in 1995. He held on to that role for 16 years before spending 5 years as the coach of the Rams. Next, we have the New Jersey Generals head coach and GM Mike Riley. Riley has been involved in each of the last 3 startup spring leagues. He coached the San Antonio Commanders and the AAF during the 2019 season. He was the offensive coordinator for the Seattle Dragons in the XFL in 2020, and now he will coach the Generals this spring in the United States Football League. Riley's first head coaching job came from the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and the Canadian Football League in 1987. He coached there for 4 years and helped them to win 2 Grey Cups. Eventually, the 64-year-old moved on to coach at Oregon State for a couple of years before a 3-year stint as a San Diego Chargers. He went just 14-34 in the NFL and eventually returned to the Oregon State Beavers during a successful 11-year stint with the team from 2003 to 2014. Next, we have the New Orleans Breakers head coach and general manager Larry Fedora. Now, if you're looking for a team that will put up a lot of offense, look no further than the New Orleans Breakers. Fedora is a big fan and proponent of the spread offense and will likely rely on his passing attack, led by quarterback Kyle Slaughter, the darling that was spoke of earlier in the top 10 video to carry the team. Fedora coached under Ron Zook at Florida and Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State before becoming head coach at Southern Miss. Later on, Fedora helped develop Austin Davis into an NFL quarterback, and his offenses averaged at least 30 points per game in his first 4 years at the University of Southern Mississippi. After that, Coach Fedora moved on to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where he continued to generate strong offensive numbers. His first 6 Tar Heel teams all averaged at least 30 points per game, with 2 averaging more than 40 per game. He turned Mitchell Trubisky into a number 2 pick, which a lot of people still question, in the 2017 NFL Draft. Next, we have Philadelphia Stars head coach and GM Bart Andrus. Andrus' name will likely be the least familiar to those tuning into the USFL this weekend, but he has plenty of professional experience. This 64-year-old coach made his name coaching in the NFL Europe, where he led the Amsterdam Admirals to 2 World Bowl appearances and 1 win. In addition to his experience in NFL Europe, Andrus worked under Jeff Fisher with the Oilers and Titans as an offensive assistant and later on a quarterbacks coach. He also coached the Toronto Argonauts of the Canadian Football League in 2009 and has coached in the UFL the Spring League and was poised to coach the XFL's Team 9 before the league ceased operations due to the COVID pandemic. Next, we have Coach Kirby Wilson of the Pittsburgh Maulers, my hometown team. Wilson rivals Jeff Fisher in terms of his overall years of NFL experience. While Wilson wasn't in the league quite as long as Coach Fisher, he's been a part of numerous organizations during his career and seeing how they all worked and culminated into having a holistic winning attitude. Wilson first came to the NFL in 1997 after he spent 11 years coaching the high school and college levels. The Patriots hired him as a running backs coach, and he carved out a niche in that role across the NFL for various teams. Wilson has coached running backs for Washington, as well as Tampa Bay, Arizona, Pittsburgh, Minnesota, Cleveland, and Oakland during his 23 years in the NFL. His longest stint was his 7 years in Pittsburgh, and hence why he was tapped to coach the Maulers. Next, we have the Tampa Bay Bandits head coach and general manager, Todd Haley. 55 years old, Haley is the youngest coach in the United States Football League. He also has relevant NFL experience as he was the head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs from 2009 to 2011 and has spent time as the offensive coordinator for the Cardinals, Pittsburgh Steelers, and Cleveland Browns. Haley posted just a 19-26 record as a head coach with the Chiefs. However, he is known as an aggressive coach and has had spats with players on the sideline, including Kurt Warner as well as Ben Roethlisberger over his years of coaching. That said, he led both Warner and Roethlisberger to some of their best professional seasons, including 4 straight Pro Bowls for Big Ben. So perhaps he can get the most out of the Bandits quarterback Jordan Ta'amu and his backup Brady White. Now let's talk about this 2022 schedule. The 2022 United States Football League season will begin on Saturday, April 16th, as games will be played on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from April till July. If the United States Football League completes the year, it will be the first spring football league to complete a season since the XFL completed its season in 2001. The United States Football League is a new professional league launching this spring and has reached agreements with the Birmingham Jefferson Civic Center Authority and a Birmingham Park and Recreation Board to play all of its 2022 regular season games in the Magic City, Birmingham, Alabama. The United States Football League will play its games at Protective Stadium, the recently christened 45,000-seat downtown home of the University of Alabama at Birmingham Blazers, as well as a number of games at historic Legion Field. The United States Football League's agreements also provide team practice and training facilities, office space, event staff, and other amenities to operate the league from Birmingham. The United States Football League will again be launching this spring. Will play its inaugural game on Saturday, April 16th in prime time at 7:30 p.m. at Protective Stadium in Birmingham, Alabama. So that's this Saturday. So that game pits the New Jersey Generals against the Birmingham Stallions, and it will be televised live on NBC and Fox at the same time. Now, this is historic because it will be the first scheduled sports competition to air at the same time on 2 competitive broadcast networks since Super Bowl I aired on NBC and CBS on January 15th, 1967. Now let's talk about some of these USFL rules. The original USFL included several groundbreaking rules changes that were ultimately adopted by the NFL later on. Instant replay and coaches' challenges were all creations of the United States Football League that the NFL added, and they continue to play a prevalent role in the NFL's game today. Here are some more notable changes that the league revealed that will differ from its NFL counterpart. The first will be a 3-point try. That's after scoring a touchdown. USFL teams will have the choice of going for a 1-point, 2-point, or 3-point play. An extra point is the same as the NFL. Teams will kick from the 15-yard line. A 2-point conversion will take place from the 2-yard line, and a 3-point conversion, something the NFL currently does not have, will take place from the 10-yard line. If a team successfully scores on a play, they will be awarded 3 points, which means a team can score as many as 9 points after scoring a touchdown. Next, we have the onside kick alternative. When onside kicks are still an option, the USFL will also offer a secondary option for teams that want to try to maintain possession after a score. Teams in the United States Football League can choose to try to convert 1 4th and 12 play from the 33-yard line. If they can get 12 yards, they will keep the ball. If they come up short, the opposing team will take possession. The NFL has toyed with a similar idea during the Pro Bowl, as teams had chances to maintain possession if they were able to convert on 4th and 15 from their own 25. Next, we'll talk about clock stoppages. So unlike the NFL, again, the clock will stop following the first down during the final 2 minutes of the second and fourth quarters. According to the league, this should create more offensive plays during the end of each half while adding excitement before halftime. So you can see maybe some Hail Marys, annexation of Puerto Ricos, and different plays to try to get the ball in the end zone before the halftime. Next, the USFL will have an overtime shootout. The UFSL's overtime will feature a best-of-3 scoring format where each offense will get the ball at the opponent's 2-yard line. If the two teams are still tied after 3 attempts, overtime will go into sudden death. The USFL, besides those rules, also has some technology that they're introducing that will differ them from the National Football League. The United States Football League is about to begin its 2022 season, and the league is experimenting with some great new ideas involving technology. During the preseason game, the league debuted how it would decide first downs with a groundbreaking technology. The USFL will have chips implanted in their footballs that determine if the ball has reached the first down marker. According to Pro Football Talk, the NFL already has chips in its footballs that are used for next-gen stats and tracking data. However, the league doesn't think the chip will be accurate to determine the first downs in a game. The USFL is embracing this modern technology boom and includes a potential visual effect that will activate when a ball crosses the goal line. So as explained by Michael McCarthy of Front Office Sports, the UFL will experiment with a football that glows when it crosses the goal line to avoid any discrepancies of fumbles and clear indications of touchdowns. It isn't clear whether or if it will be deployed this season. However, embracing technology is a good thing, especially if you want to differentiate yourself from a large competitor that's been in business for a long time. It's a very good thing that the United States Football League is relying on something more than a naked eye or 2 sticks separated by 10 yards of chain to, again, posture yourselves different and have more longevity in the future. So in closing, I would like to ask these few questions. How would the United States Football League stand to the fan-controlled league, the XFL, and any other pop-up leagues that will happen in the summertime? Will the talent stay and grow for NFL matriculation? Will new rules be implemented allowing sophomores to enter the league to even up the ante of people that could come in and play professional football, just like basketball? And again, what is the longitudinal viability of this spring league? Thank you for tuning in this week's episode of Sports 101. Make sure you get social with my show and the litany of other shows on SportsZone Chicago by following SportsZone Chicago on social media. SportsZone Chicago can be found on Twitter at SportsZone CHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Remember, subscribe to the YouTube channel, search SportsZone Chicago. But more importantly, we need everyone to download the SportsZone Chicago app. The SportsZone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. I am Jamar Harp, and you have just watched another episode of Sports 101. I will see you next week at our normally scheduled time, Wednesday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. And I'm gone.